Hello everyone, so today we're going to be going over the women's reproductive cycle and performance and how that can affect your gym performance. What does the research say, what would I suggest, and so on and so forth. So this is going to be this week's topic, been a frequently asked question. Wouldn't say it's my expertise, but it's something we're going to go into a little bit more, something that I've been doing a lot of research and a few courses on, so we'll see what we will bring and what I would recommend. Okay, so what does the research suggest? What is it that affects the performance? So number one, does it affect performance? So research suggests 74% of females said that it would negatively affect performance and 90% it impacted training. So a very, very strong negative impact on to performance. So going forward, what would I recommend? First of all, we need to start tracking to make sure that you understand the symptoms, what's normal, what's not, what's been a regular occurrence of symptoms, and making sure we are keeping it measured. So mood, performance, energy, so on and so forth, bloating. We're going to go into a little bit more symptoms, but the first things first is making sure that we are tracking it. There's quite a few menstrual cycling tracking apps that are available on iPhone and Android, so I'd recommend first of all is to start tracking. The obviously 28-day cycle is split into two 14-day phases and an ovulation phase in the middle. The follicular phase, the first 14 days, and then the second part, the second 14 days as the luteal, split with ovulation in the middle. So what is it to be expected? So the follicular phase is very much more like a male's physiology, so much more perceived higher energy levels, less likely to feel pain and recover faster from training, much more likely to make more strength training gains and to make sure and more suited for high intensity. In the ovulatory phase, so that on the 14-day mark, research suggests that ligaments should be a little bit more lax, so a bit more loose, and women are more likely to suffer an ACL injury during that time. So what can we do? What can we do to prevent that? So making sure we have much more warm-up steps in between, not as big a gaps, making sure we're taking our time with training. If you have a squat variation, making sure we're taking our time to build up. The luteal phase, so making sure that we are, first of all, the symptoms. This is where metabolism starts to decrease, insulin resistance, you start craving more energy, increased ventilation and respiratory issues, perceived more exertion, thermoregulation comes up, so if you're feeling hotter, you're more likely to hold fluid, blood pressure goes up, so more likely to get headaches, harder to build muscle, more inflammation, more cramping and GI issues, and a lot more reduced recovery capacity. So what can we do? If you're suffering a lot of symptoms, what I'd recommend is bringing down whatever's on the plan, just bring it down 1 RPE. If it's still unbearable and you still feel like you're building up fatigue and you feel super tired, might even have to bring it down 1 more again. This is depending on how you feel. So going forward, making sure that you are monitoring your symptoms. If the symptoms are increasing, pull back the training a little bit. The reason behind that is basically training is a stressor in itself, and obviously you have this physiological stressor, which is your menstrual cycle, and then you have additional stressors. So you have stress from work, and then you have your sleep, which is actually a positive influence on your stress, but obviously if it's been affecting as well, so that could be an additional stress. Family issues, nutrition is obviously a stressor. If you're having bad nutritional habits, that can also have an impact on inflammation. So all these stressors, one of them has to give. So if your physiological one your menstrual cycle is going up, you need to pull back on making sure that your nutrition and sleep is definitely on point, because that's going to improve recovery, especially in this, even more so in this luteal phase, because your stresses are just super increased. If the nutrition goes and the sleep goes, either one thing's going to go, is the training's going to stop because you just can't handle it, or you're going to end up eating more food, is generally the rule of thumb, just because it's just becoming too intense and unbearable. So making sure recovery's on point, make sure sleep's on point, nutrition's on point, these things are going to help improve your recovery rate and also reduce any symptoms. Obviously, if you're tracking your menstrual cycle and severe symptoms come up, and they're coming up increased, more than usual, obviously I'm not a GP or a women's health physio, so I would very much recommend seeing one of them too if you are concerned about any issues or any increased pain or fatigue. So going into more detail, what are the reasons behind this? Obviously, during a heavy period, increased iron deficiency and anemia, so that can lead to more fatigue, weakness, and cognitive function. PCSO is also an increased level of androgens and testosterone, and irregularities within the menstrual cycle, absences within the period. So that's particularly a natural side effect of a hard training cycle, and especially within endurance athletes, it's very much absent. That can lead to sometimes a hormone imbalance. It also can happen premenstrual, obviously a big event. So if anyone's training for a competition, it can also obviously happen there as well. But if there's anything that's going to obviously affect your hormonal balances, sometimes it might need to indicate that the training loads are maybe a little bit too high and you need to be pulling back a little bit. Obviously, another suggestion is obviously the pain that is caused in the abdominals is also pulling that back as a limiter. So making sure there's no direct ab work if it's in particular pain, and if needed, pulling back a session, maybe missing one, if it means for the overall long-term positive output that you're going to be able to train longer long-term. And then the last one, making sure fatigue and low energy availability is obviously impacted due to obviously having abnormal hormonal balance and energy output. So making sure that our output is now pulled back a little bit, just like I said, the stresses are being too high, and making sure we're pulling back and recovering from workouts. So that's everything that I have suggested. Obviously, like I said, I'm not a general practitioner, I'm not a women's health physio, so if you are having any issues, anything irregular, I would suggest seeing a doctor, and this is going to improve any questions or queries that you have with your menstrual cycle. And if you are having any issues, I'll make sure to get it checked out, just for peace of mind, and making sure that if there's any issues, it can be resolved, finding the root cause, not obviously prematurely solving the symptom. But that's it. I hope you have a great day. I hope this has been helpful, and I will talk to you soon.